Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Of all the things at risk, the loss of an objective reality is perhaps the most dangerous.
The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil.
When truth leaves us, when we let it slip away, when it is ripped from our hands,
We become vulnerable to the appetite of whatever monster screams the loudest.
and the monster screaming the loudest, the monster he helped create, the monster who will come for us all soon enough, is Emperor Palpatine.
Well, hello, Star Wars fans, and welcome to Road to Rebellion, the official ATG Andor after show. I am Pete Fletzer.
And I am Nick Mielke, and I want to thank you for hanging out with us here on Around the Galaxy, part of the SSW network.
Well, now that the season has ended and we've seen all 12 episodes, not seasons, boy, I wish we had 12 seasons, but 12 episodes of season 2 of Andor, we're going to take a look at the politics of Andor and the Star Wars galaxy at large.
And as we have done every week on Road to Rebellion, I want to stop very quickly and give a warning. This is a full spoiler show. We're going to talk about Andor seasons 1 and 2. We're going to talk about Rogue One. We're going to talk about other parts of the Star Wars galaxy. If you're not caught up on it, you may want to pause. I mean, there's not a lot of worry that we're going to ruin Ahsoka for you, but all these things are directly connected to Andor. You definitely want to be caught up on that. So pause it. Get caught up, and then come back and listen to us, because we know we want you to be a part of the conversation, but we don't want to ruin it for you either.
No, we do not. And each week on Road to Rebellion, Nick and I have unpacked the story, the characters, the big moments, the little details, and everything in between. But this week, Nick, we are joined by friend of the show, Stephen Kent.
That's right, Pete. And I'm excited to have this conversation. Stephen Kent is the host of the Geeky Stoics YouTube channel. He's the author of the book, How the Force Can Fix the World, a thoughtful exploration of the deeper lessons in Star Wars about liberty, empathy, and bridging our divides. Wow, what a concept in these modern times. Stephen's work lives at the intersection of pop culture and political philosophy, which I love. From the Geeky Stoics newsletter to his appearances on national news outlets, he brings a unique, often center-right perspective to these conversations, and today we're going to dig into the politics of Andor with him, especially how the series reflects the real-world tensions we're seeing right now around power, resistance, moral compromise. So I am proud to say, Stephen Kent, welcome to Road to Rebellion.
Hello, guys. Good to see you.
Stephen, how are you? How have you been?
I've been very well. I have missed Around the Galaxy, so it's nice to be back.
We are excited to have you back. Before we get into what you thought of Andor Season 2, maybe give us and our listeners a little bit of background on your Star Wars journey. You have done so many different interconnectivities between the real world and Star Wars. So tell us a little bit about that history.
Oh my gosh, that's
a little bit.
That's a storied history. I mean, I was coming, awake to the existence of politics in high school in 2005. I'm dating myself in the opposite direction. I was a junior in 2005, watching Revenge of the Sith with my best friends and coming to understand right at that moment some of the things that they were talking about, the rhetoric around the Iraq war, the invasion of Afghanistan, and everything in the wake of the war on terror, this us against them sort of thing going on in the country. And, that interested me in Star Wars at a hugely deep level for most of my youth. And that continued into adulthood and was certainly reawakened around the time of The Force Awakens and Star Wars coming back. And I started this podcast called Beltway Banthas in 2015, which was dedicated to basically doing like Hannity and Combs, but, for Star Wars. So, if you grew up in the day when Hannity had someone to spar with on Fox News, he had this squishy liberal named Alan Colmes that he could kick around all night. And we wanted to do like a show like that with one of my really good friends at the time, Swara Saleh, like a solid leftist, great guy. And we just discussed what Star Wars means to us on a deeper level, and sometimes would have it out and do debate and move on and do another show the next week. It was a great time, and that kind of bridged into doing a book on the same subject that you mentioned, how the Force can fix the world. And in my political commentary career, because I'm a political writer by day and do PR, that's also led me to kind of be like the Star Wars explainer, the conservative geek on like the Glenn Beck show, and going on Fox from time to time to tell them why Disney Star Wars is actually pretty good. So it's been an interesting journey. Star Wars politics is what I'm all about.
Yeah. And it's, I think people forget that the second word in Star Wars is war, and war is politics or rooted in politics. So I got to ask you, season 2 of Andor, how did it hit you? How did it strike you? What were your overall thoughts before we start to really dig into some of what some of the underlying politics might have been?
Oh my gosh. I'm just like daydreaming about Star Wars, right now. It's one of those special things that when a Star Wars show does it right, or a Star Wars movie does it right, you just find yourself zoning out in the middle of the day, just revisiting some of those scenes and the landscapes, and going back to Ghorman and trying to understand how that situation unraveled and fell apart the way that it did. And like, could the people of Ghorman done anything different to avoid that situation on their end? How much were they baited versus how much did they ask for it? Like, it's just, there's so much going on there. And I just am going, man, I wish I had a political Star Wars podcast where I could be delving into Andor, because this is the show that was made for. Andor takes politics seriously and presents it in a way that adults can understand, unless you are like some of these very, very peculiar adults on Twitter who refuse to acknowledge the existence of politics in a galaxy far, far away. We're not allowed to talk about that.
Right.
This is a kids show.
Right. I go to Star Wars to get away from politics. Well, maybe.
Yeah, right.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I think for me, the main thing that I've been thinking about in the wake of Andor has been, well, how cool the ISB is, for starters. I would like a membership card. It's been Nemec's manifesto from season 1.
Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward.
And it has been this wonderful monologue that we get between the rebel, Nemec, who's talking to him about how fast the pace of oppression is growing across the galaxy. He says it outstrips our ability to understand it. Like, this is a means of control, and you could call it Google controlling us all with Google Maps, or you could just call it like the government's agenda in general to make us dependent on anybody but ourselves. And this whole thing with Nemec comes back at the end of Andor in the very last episode or two, as the Partagaz, the Imperial ISB chair, is listening to his manifesto, because it has spread across the galaxy just like they predicted. It is like a virus. It just spreads and spreads and spreads, and you can't plug all the holes that are popping out. And Nemec says in his manifesto just something that is so powerful and so true, which is that
Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that.
People long for freedom. That is a human instinct just as much as the instinct for control. Like, we kind of swing as human beings between wanting order and wanting total freedom. And he says that tyranny requires constant effort. And that's what the ISB is. Every single day you're putting out a fire, stamping out some sort of speech around the galaxy.
Yep.
And he says that imperialism is brittle, that authority is brittle, and that it's always breaking. And then the ISB officer, kills himself. And some of the jokesters on Twitter are like, "This is what happens when a fascist listens to the Communist Manifesto for the first time." Like, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure when a proto-fascist reads the Communist Manifesto, they're like, "I'm definitely fascist. Give me, I want more of whatever this is not."
Right. You are reinforcing my beliefs. Thank you very much. Yes.
This book is everything I'm against. Yeah. Anyways,
exactly. There is a ton to choose from in season 2, but for you, what do you see as kind of the core political themes in this season, or even in the 2 seasons overall? And does it kind of refine for you what Star Wars has always talked about? We've had this for going on years now, and it does something to me where it continues to refine what we knew it was about in 1977 and what we knew it continued to be about in 1980 and 1983. Having something like Andor that digs into it, I've said for a long time, this is my West Wing Star Wars. This gets into the nitty gritty, and it gets into, the dialogue. So for you, what are those core themes that really get refined as we look at this season?
So the core themes that are refined, that kind of go back to Star Wars as it's always been. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so. Star Wars for me, as it's always been, has been that Luke Skywalker has to contend in the cave with the possibility that the man under the mask could be just like him. Mm-hmm. That when he busts open Darth Vader's mask in that vision in that Force cave, that it's his face he sees. And then we take that to Return of the Jedi, and he cuts off Darth Vader's hand on the Death Star, and he sees the wiring come out, and he looks at his hand and he goes, "I could become just like this." For me, that is Star Wars' central message. And that is the morality that underpins all of it, which is why a lot of the self-righteousness and finger pointing that goes on in Star Wars fandom about who's the bad guys and all that, I'm like, you've missed the entire point. The point is that you could wake up tomorrow and have stumbled into evil and not recognize it. Yeah. And so you see that in the prequels, of course. And then that's also happening there in Andor in these weird ways, Cyril's story. Mm-hmm. Cyril's story is, of course, along these lines because he's not a lunatic. He's just kind of like he's a mama's boy. He loves order. He loves rules. He was a cop. And then he witnessed this crime, this act of terror that occurred on Ferrix that was, linked to Cassian Andor. And he's kind of getting radicalized by this idea of the galaxies coming apart, and they just need people who believe in rules to keep things together. And I think you should, at some point in the show, feel a little bit of sympathy for Cyril, and go he's not a monster. He's actually just a relatively normal person who just wants the ships to run on time or the trains to run on time. Mm-hmm. But then it turns out there are people like Dedra Meero and Partagaz and Krennic who are very content with massacring people to make the trains run on time. And it turns out and it's so fascinating, Cyril's actually not into that.
Right.
He's not into that. We kind of laughed about him being sort of the proto-fascist of the show, or the alt-right, kind of pipeline guy. Yeah. And he does represent that to a certain extent, but then it turns out he's really not into massacring innocent civilians, and it completely pulled the veil off of his eyes. And so for me, it's just people are complicated. You can become the bad guy if you're not careful and you don't check your own power. And also, the bad guy can actually be good. They can be misled. They can be helped sometimes. And like the fact that the Ghorman, the Ghorman front, like they know he's an Imperial. They know he might be spying on them. And still they're kind to him. Still they outreach to him. They show their human face to him in their underground meetings. And they make him ask questions about his morality in this empire that he serves. And you don't get to see a lot of it, but they got under his skin. You know? They got under his skin in a big way. And then when it came to killing these people, he was not there for it.
I think there was such a good juxtaposition because about halfway, maybe a little bit before the halfway mark of the season, he's with Dedra. He's in the room. They're having the secret meeting. You know, he's kind of he's a part of the thing and he feels so cool. And like he has that, he's like, why aren't we keeping on going? Like, we're here to do this thing. He wants to be a part of it. And it comes from, you know, what has informed him, his overbearing mother, his desire to, you know, not have his uncle held over his head and all those kinds of things. So like you said, all of a sudden he looks up and he's in over his head and doesn't realize what he's gotten himself into unwittingly because he wanted to be a part. He wanted to be cool. He wanted to be involved. And then the Ghorman, they did start to get to him. And I think you're exactly right. And so by the time we reach the end of Cyril's journey, he went, oh, wait a minute. And you can see the cracks showing up in that facade.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, one of the things that I was going to ask you about, Stephen, is, you know, how do people reconcile who are Star Wars fans and, you know, don't realize that, you know, maybe the Empire is happening around them? I tend to think that Cyril may be one of those guys who might have a YouTube channel, who's angry about things, and then get into that real situation and say, wait a second, that's not what I thought I was supporting, right? So,
well, I know you have opinions about this. Cyril definitely has a YouTube channel. No, I'm sorry. Where are all the right wingers now? They went off to some other platform, Rumble.
Rumble, right? Yeah,
he's got a Rumble show and sponsored by Dave Rubin or something. No, I think in general, I mean, Cyril's character. He knew that he was participating in an empire that was plugging all the holes left by the Clone Wars and all the pain and devastation of the separatist movement. I mean, I think one of the things we often forget in Star Wars fandom when we're analyzing these things is just how bad the Clone Wars were. The Clone Wars were really, really horrific. Just mass Holocaust after mass Holocaust. And so you come out of that situation with a lot of people who are like, never again. Whatever led to that or facilitated that, I want the opposite. And I'm not going to go like around here waving my history books, but like I just finished redoing a study of Benito Mussolini, who was, you know, also like Adolf Hitler, a veteran of World War I, ashamed of Italy's treatment at the end of the war. It turns out like Italy was actually on the other side. So they fought against the Central Powers in World War I. They were on the opposite side of Germany, helping the Allies. And they felt like they got shafted in the spoils of war. And so Mussolini was one of these veterans of that war who had a chip on his shoulder about it. He felt like Italy had been emasculated, and you know, he came up with this thing, fascism. You know, that was the idea of us all coming together. You know, the actual fascist symbol, the word, is a bundle of sticks with an axe cleaver on top. That the collective can become dangerous when they come together. They can chop down a tree. They can do anything. And like Benito Mussolini gets completely left out of our understanding of what fascism is and what like far right politics can do when it goes wrong. The only literacy that we have in this country for understanding evil and bad things is Hitler. and the Nazis, it's actually, it really, I think, is a huge danger to our civilization. And I might be going off on a tangent here, but I think it really puts us in a bad place that we only have one way to understand evil politics, and it's Nazis and Hitler. And we just completely forget this other mode that fascism can take and that form of politics can take. Benito Mussolini's fascism, Japanese imperialism, Stalinistic communism or Stalinism. And it makes us blind to all the things that can happen around us in our government. If we're only looking out for the bad guys in black with the skull and the crossbones on their jacket, you will miss when dangerous people walk right by you wearing suits and ties. That's kind of like what your question just kind of makes me think of is like, how do we know when we're in the empire or the empire is forming around us? I just think Americans have their head in the sand about what it will look like.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Is Andor more important now than it was when it came out 5 years ago, when Star Wars came out 50 years ago? Or is it just another great piece of fiction that is reflecting a period that we live in at this time?
It came out originally in 2022, right?
Yeah, the first season was 22. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the second season here is definitely more impactful and speaks to, I think, something that people feel. It feels prescient. And when I go back to the prequels and there's all this talk about George Lucas and, the influence of the Iraq War and Afghanistan and the War on Terror. Right. And some of it is true. There was like one or two instances of script tweaks where George Lucas was trying to make a statement. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy, says George Lucas or George W. Bush to the UN. I think it was. He's like, if you're not with us, you're with the terrorists. Yep. Just to speak to people. But it really obscures the fact that George wrote this thing in the 90s. Mm-hmm. That this story was gonna go this way, no matter what was happening in American politics. Right. Like our self-centered worldview that everything that happens on screen is a reflection of what's going on with Republicans and Democrats, and not, like a Russian audience member who was shown on the news in 2005 coming out of the theaters seeing Revenge of the Sith and going, this feels very similar to what is going on in Russia. Vladimir Putin, like other people relate to this story. Right. Star Wars is a global tale. And I find it frustrating when Star Wars fans hear Mon Mothma say the word genocide. And then she says it again, genocide. And then they're like tweeting, she said the word, she said genocide. And then they put up their Palestine flag as if that's the only thing going on in the world, that there is not a genocide going on in South Sudan still, or Myanmar, that there's not still this mass Holocaust of Christians and Yazidis going on in Syria and Iraq. Like, there is a lot of stuff going on in the world that is important. Mm-hmm. And does not always interest like niche progressive activists in the US. Mm-hmm. The most, I think, interesting example of like the empire in Andor, they're talking about mining Ghorman. They're going to destroy these people. Mm-hmm. They're going to mine their planet. They're going to kill them if necessary and make them the bad guys in the situation. And use basically the fruits of the planet to finance their oppression of the galaxy. I mean, in my day job at work for the past 2 years, we've been doing a campaign raising awareness of how Putin's Russia is sending mercenaries into the country of Mali, enslaving thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in the rural villages of Mali and forcing them into pits to mine gold, to then pull the gold out of the earth to pay their soldiers, because most of their soldiers fighting in Ukraine have not been paid in a long time. They are actually like committing a small scale genocide and enslavement to finance their war in Ukraine. And so like this is going on, and it's not super interesting to people. And I just get really annoyed when people go, Andor is speaking to my thing, this one thing that only progressives in the US hate. No, it's a lot more impactful than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I seem to remember when you and I had spoken when you were a guest some other time about that same sort of concept about, Revenge of the Sith was, it spoke to people around the world and different people in different times. And maybe that's what makes it so good, right? Is the fact that it doesn't matter where you're seeing it. Hopefully it's waking you up to, what could be happening around you. So I think that's,
otherwise
really
what good is it? What good is it? If Star Wars said something true in Return of the Jedi about our morality, and it said something true about taking sides or moral relativism and Revenge of the Sith, but it only applies to the War on Terror and the early 2000s, then what good is it?
Right.
And so exactly. that's the thing that I try to always educate people on and ask them to consider. And, I'm a right winger. Like I'll just say the words. I'm not a conservative. I'm a right winger. I think these stories are really important for understanding the world. And it just is counterproductive when people go, Star Wars is political, man. Don't you know George Lucas named Newt Gunray after Newt Gingrich? It's like, what good is that? Like, what is that? Like, what does that even mean? That doesn't make those movies political. It means he's playing word games with his characters. What is political is the message of those movies, and they're as true today as they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so prescient about Andor running at the same time as the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, in that people were now watching Revenge of the Sith again, being reminded of that movie and going, oh my God, he was telling us what we need to know now. And the fact is, it was a 20-year-old movie, and he wasn't predicting the future of 20 years. He was predicting or commenting on what was happening at that time. So, and again, it makes
Tony Gilroy is smart. I mean, Tony Gilroy has been playing this same tactic when he's doing his interviews and saying I'm not looking at the news to write this. I'm reading books. I'm reading history books because the cycles of oppression and control and then revolution and freedom movements, it just goes round and round and round and round. And, if your only source of understanding the world is what's going on the propagandistic television networks, I think you just have a really limited understanding of the world you live in.
Yeah. And again, that leads to some of that bigger theming around propaganda and how easily it is to lose sight of things around, etc. But so I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Luthen, Saw, and Mon Mothma, because they each offer sort of different philosophies of what resistance is, right? And how to go about it. So how do you interpret their sort of ideological conflict? Do you see any real world analogs for their, the necessary evil sort of approach of both Luthen and Saw, or this moral purity that we saw from Mon Mothma when she saw Andor shoot somebody in front of her for the first time? It was the first time she was exposed to the fact that people die during these things. So
how nice for you,
right? That was one of the best
that was
lines.
So good. Yes. How nice for you. So I mean, my hot take, and this is probably not actually that hot, but basically, I think you're looking at a show, Andor, that is dressed in leftist aesthetics, sort of looking at the world through a leftist worldview and a lens. And there's nothing wrong with that. Tony Gilroy is who he is, and the show is still really great. Politics in this show is authentic. And in every political movement, left, right, or center, you're always going to have your establishmentarians and your moderates and your radicals and your people who kind of want to burn it all down.
Right.
and your agitators somewhere in the middle. And right there in Mon Mothma, Luthen, and Saw Gerrera, I mean, you've got your neoliberal, I think Hillary Clinton, Mon Mothma. You've got Luthen Rail. I don't know who he represents exactly, but he's like a broker between the two sides. But then you've got like your Che Guevara, just hardcore revolutionary. You know, we are going to not just win this war, but we're going to have executions at the end. And also, I don't know what I'm building. To me, like those kind of figures exist on the right as well, like the people who are like deconstructionist, want to burn it all down, and the people who really want to preserve the system. But there's just something about the revolutionary energy of the Rebel Alliance, particularly in Andor. I'm not saying this about every other piece of Star Wars, but particularly in Andor, which just sort of codes to me as left politics. And that's like what Saw Gerrera is. And I'm glad that they made Saw Gerrera less sympathetic in this show. Yeah. I think Rogue One did paint a picture for us of the Che Guevara type revolutionary who's not really interested in compromised liberalism. But this show went a little bit of a step further and was like, he's crazy. He's on crack. He kills people. He's not a guy that we should, look up to as some sort of leader. And they really helped Mon Mothma. Mon Mothma, before the Andor series, really did struggle from looking like a total squish. She looked like the person who stayed in the Imperial Senate for as long as possible, got out when it was convenient for her, and then came in to be the white savior of the rebellion and just be very neat and tidy. And then, by the way, she completely ruins the New Republic. Like, Mon Mothma's legacy in the books has been tainted by her management of the New Republic. She does a horrible job. And so, like, this show kind of helped her a little bit to say, like, no, she was brave. She was courageous. She did the hard thing, which was actually staying in this situation for as long as she did and leading and putting herself on the line with that speech that she gave on the Senate floor. I think it's interesting just because, like, political revolutionaries, there will always be different roles that you have to play. And Luthen Rail understood the roles. He understood that Saw Gerrera was the person on the outside pressuring the Rebel Alliance to up their game. And if the Rebel Alliance didn't up their game, then the crazies who do bombings against civilians will take over most of the rebel action. And so Luthen is like, no, we need an organized rebellion. Mon Mothma is actually super important to being a rallying figure for this. And I'm going to push her to leave her comfort zone so that Saw doesn't win. And that's real, folks. Like, that's reality.
But I loved the fact that he took on Mon Mothma face to face, or hologram to face, and
in Rebels,
in Rebels, and in the show,
in the show too,
and they had those arguments,
Well, and I think the other part of Rebels, not only, the big speech that kind of culminates outside the temple when the R5 droid or whatever it is projects and they have that kind of showdown, but even that episode leading up to that where Ezra and Sabine and they go to take out the comms tower and he ends up rescuing them and picking them up, and it puts before them, hey, there's another side to this, and they're faced with, oh, we're doing it with the rebels, but there's this other guy who's kind of taking action. And you see, for somebody like Sabine and Ezra, that has the potential to be intriguing. Like, oh, we're actually going to go blow something up and get something done, as opposed to sitting back and playing what to seem to them may have seemed like a long game or seeming like a different way. So obviously the other parts of the media help explore that and that relationship between them even more, which I think just adds to it.
Yeah, and it's historically relevant. Same as with X-Men. X-Men often gets drawn back to discussion of the civil rights movement. Magneto is very much more of like a Malcolm X figure. Versus the Martin Luther King-ism, we are all equal and can live together, as brothers of Professor X. That is something you can't get away from when discussing X-Men, and in Star Wars, I mean, there's something like similar going on here too. They're just different stripes of rebellion and action. I mean, Martin Luther King was not an unchallenged leader of the civil rights movement. He had to contend with Stokely Carmichael of the SNCC. He had to contend with Malcolm X and other people challenging his leadership and saying, nonviolence is not going to work. This is not the way to go. We actually should be more militant. We should go the way of the Black Panthers. We actually should not have integration. We should have Black communities, white communities, and we should defend our communities. Like, there are differences of opinion in revolutionary movements, and movements that we look back on as being universally good. And there's like a thing happening in American politics right now, which I think is really, really interesting, which is that MLKism has basically been the scripture of American history since the 1960s for 5 decades. And we're in this weird cultural moment where it kind of feels like Malcolm X is sort of being revisited by progressives on the left and racialists, where his version of what should have happened after the civil rights movement is very much steeped in what we see today in Black Lives Matter. And that's like my side tangent, just to say that rebellions are complicated. Rebelling against tyranny and oppressive systems is never unified. And I just love, and Rogue One gave it to us first, that we now have a rebellion that is real. It is complicated, it's fractious, it's really ugly, and people within it had to do really bad things. Luthen Rail is a bad guy, but he did a very good thing so that we could all see a sunrise that he will never see.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, as we've talked about Luthen and Saw and Mon Mothma, we kind of have another side of this coin that I want to dig into for a minute. And in Andor, we get the bureaucrats on the side of the Empire. We've got Dedra, we've got Partagaz, we've got Krennic, and we've got them wielding this power and pushing this machine forward. What do you see in that? Certainly real world political figures, movements that kind of mirror some of this. Obviously, you're going to have the big leaders at the top of these chains, but you're going to have the other people coming behind them, making some of this oppression happen. Do you see it even in some of the stuff? We try not to minimize it too much to U.S. politics, but we've got the Elon Musks of the world and some of these other people driving some of our politics right now. Where does all that land for you?
Well, people who say that will always have to contend with the fact that Elon Musk is eliminating government jobs, not adding them. So, it's just that makes these conversations a little bit hard. The people who we think are the empire based on our politics are always trying to slash government spending and have people educate their own children instead of the government. So that's my quick defense from a conservative lens. But I will tell you that what goes on in the ISB is very, very Trumpian, and Trump's administrative style and the way that he runs his White House, which we saw in 2016 to 2020, is The Apprentice. He pits his underlings against each other. He always did it. I'm having trouble recalling specific names, but you start with his first apprentice, that was Steve Bannon, who was in the White House in the first administration. And then he encourages, and some of the books, some of the books that were already written by the Trump administration, he pitted people against each other. He likes the conflict. And in a way, that's very Sith style leadership. Sith style leadership is, I will have multiple apprentices. They will be pit against one another, and they will fight to be stronger, and then one day to kill and replace me. And that is what you then see played out in the Empire. Palpatine's mode of being a Sith master is exactly how his government works. The imperial government is a reflection of his Sith values. And Donald Trump does have a lot of that. He feeds on conflict, and he likes the power games, and he loves the Game of Thrones in his presence. And so I'm just like, I'm looking at the dog eat dog nature of Cyril gets eaten by Dedra and Partagaz get eaten by Krennic, and Krennic gets eaten by Tarkin, and Tarkin, answers to Vader and Palpatine. I mean, this exists in every political circle, but it's pretty unique to this particular president who loves running his administration like a game show of underlings.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair observation to say the ISB is very Trumpian, and that it's because you even saw with like Hirt and all the Lonnie Young was able to sort of survive in that by sort of staying quiet. And
to be clear, I mean, when I look at the ISB, I have a couple of thoughts, and it's how this current administration works. But the other one is just like, what does this group of people do all day? They are listening to intelligence. They are following online conversations. Like, imagine the ISB in that circular room is basically like keeping an eye on Twitter. They're keeping an eye on all the conversations that are being had. And these ISB officers are presenting, there's been a little outbreak of discussion on YouTube about this particular subject. And Partagaz goes, well, then what shall we do about that? We need to put out that fire. I mean, the first thing that I think about every time is going to be the FBI having meetings with the former heads of Twitter and Facebook to squash conversation on issues that they didn't like from 2020 to 2024. It happened in mass, and it did, in fact, happen in government buildings. And nobody likes to talk about that, but it's true. And so, like, when I see that group there putting out fires of little things they don't like, I'll never forget when I had a YouTube show associated with a major news network, and our episodes were scrubbed from YouTube during the pandemic because we had conversations that were not approved by Google, but that was actually coming from the White House, and that's a fact. And so we got to be really real with ourselves about how close our government gets, and the permanent government gets, like the government that exists between administrations, to major companies that control our conversations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Ghorman episodes really dramatize that entire sort of media positioning of everything. So, I was going to ask you, how you see it in modern news cycles, but you just sort of said it there. I mean, it is, it was really interesting to kind of watch that, when Cyril said to his mother, "You're watching too much Imperial News," I felt like he was saying, "Hey, Mom, you're watching too much Fox News," right? And that,
why does all the news have to be like Hunger Games? The Hunger Games culture is like also what they had in Andor for news. For sure. But I'm pretty convinced Jesse Waters of Fox would also like fit in there. You just need to like turn his hair purple, and Stephen Colbert would also like be really great with like Hunger Games hair just flared up to be a propagandist for the regime. You need Jesse Waters and Stephen Colbert as handmaidens of the state.
Yeah, for sure. But it was interesting because where I would draw sort of that, from a story standpoint, the way I saw the end of the Ghorman episodes where Edie is watching Imperial News, her son died a hero, never knowing what happened. All she knows is that the Empire was attacked by these terrorists, and then that there was hundreds of deaths of very brave Imperials. And to her, I look at it, or my perception is that she sees that, if her son died as a member of the Empire, it was part of this, very a sort of prideful moment, if you will. It was the right thing for him to be there at that time. So
I guess. I mean,
maybe I'm crazy.
She didn't even believe that. I mean, I don't understand her complex, but I think that's the point is like, she wanted big things for him, but she always, whenever he had a big thing, she kind of thought he was like in over his head or undeserving of it. So I wonder what she says to friends, I imagine, well, I don't know.
She
what
probably
do you think she says to her friends when she says, my son died on Ghorman? Do you think she's like, he shouldn't have been there at all to begin with? He was unqualified.
No, I see it the other way. I see it as her finally having that win, that pride, that she could be proud of her son, who this very important moment in the Empire, and he was part
but she's
of the
only
Empire.
proud of him when he's dead.
Correct, right. And that's the saddest part of his
he
story.
doesn't get to know it. Yeah.
That's dark. Yeah. No, but it's also like it's part of her twistedness. I think for her, when her son is alive, all she can ever do is make him feel small. Right. But when he's dead, she will lionize him for her own self-aggrandizement at cocktail parties.
Yeah.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Close us out with asking you a question that, let's look at this from a really positive side. In your book, you highlight hope and empathy. And how do you see that coming from some of the messages and even the political narrative of Andor season 2? Where do you see the hope, the empathy, and the sort of where we started, the direct connection to what Star Wars can possibly mean?
Man, rebellions are built on hope. I guess I just want to sound off on that. I mean, the fact that line, which was so impactful from Rogue One, which is delivered by Jyn Erso to the committee, the rebel committee, to compel them to action to go make this end run on the Death Star. She got that from Cassian Andor when he says it earlier in the movie. And we find out that Cassian picked it up from a bellman at a hotel. I used to be a bellman at a Hilton hotel. I did 2 years in management. It was great. I worked the front desk. And so in that moment, I was like seeing myself. I was like, a hotel bellman passing on words of wisdom to a guest. And that to me is that's what it's all about. Like real everyday people are where rebellion is going to come from. If your rebellion has to come from established political interests, the people with the most money, or a podcasting or YouTube class of very influential people trying to like force your very niche opinions on the rest of the country, you're not going to have a rebellion. Rebellions are going to be organic. They're going to be from the bottom up. They're going to be from regular everyday people. And that's Nimick. That is what Nimick was writing about, that tyranny and oppression is unnatural, that freedom is a pure idea, and that it's just going to be like one person after another that breaks the siege that the Empire's put on. And that to me, like, that is hope. That is a reminder that people matter. If your politics are not rooted in what everyday people care about, you will lose. And that is a message that should go straight to the political right and the political left. Some of the left's very weird niche issues that they try to advance. And like the Republicans, like weirdly like saying that now tariffs are cool and you should only have 5 pencils and 3 dolls for Christmas or something. And they're basically saying like, do it because it's patriotic, have less stuff as patriot. That's Maoism. Right. That is Maoist communism masquerading as MAGA. It's very weird. So anyways, I will take it back to the book. That is a message of hope that like comes right out of Andor. belief in people. And also, like you mentioned, the empathy factor, and empathy was a big part of my book. Cyril Karn is a story that should direct us towards empathy. Like, if you are still in the end of season 2 and demonizing Cyril as some like radicalized incel, you're missing the point. You've missed the point of Andor.
Yeah.
Have some empathy for this guy and try to understand what got him here, and then figure out a way to pull him out, because people in that world, and I've known a lot of them. I said I'm a right winger. I've lost a lot of people in my world to radical stuff. You know, they're gone. They've just gone off to the dark side. You can pull them out, and that's going to take love. It's going to take empathy. It's going to take hope that they can be brought out of those things and shown the light again. Or you can just hate them, and you can kill them if you really want to. Like, you know, there are a lot of people out there who their political ideology just ends at, we'd have to eliminate these people. That's not the country we want to live in.
Not at all.
That's such a great way to put it. Love that.
Well, Stephen, we do want to thank you for joining us tonight and for having this conversation. Before we get you out of here, where can people follow you online and keep up with what you're doing?
Like my tweets at Stephen Kent X. That's STEPHEN Kent X. I would love to talk with you. And we've got videos up on YouTube for Geeky Stoics. It's a philosophy and pop culture channel. It mostly deals in Star Wars. There's a lot of new Andor videos up. We just have one up on Mon Mothma's courage and a connection to Cato the Younger. Last week, we did a video on Mon Mothma's boomer-style feminism and its limitations. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there for different people of different stripes, and we'd love to have you over. And Pete, I hope we can do another episode where we get to yell at each other. We can. I was expecting to debate tonight.
I was, you know, it's funny. I'm more than happy to have those kind of conversations.
You're more than happy.
But no, I think, I wanted to, what we really want to do with this episode, and I think it happened, was just to get a deeper understanding of the politics and recognize that it's, you know, it's not, we said it early on, right? The good stories are the ones that have an impact and that can stick with us, whether we like what it says and where we are or not. So,
Sure.
But yes, we have to debate again. It's been too long.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Road to Rebellion, the Andor After Show. Thanks for joining us on this journey as we've broken down season 2.
And just because the show is over doesn't mean that we are done just yet. We are going to bring a special finale episode next week with your questions and comments. We would love it if you would call us and leave us a voicemail at 504-321-1501. If you want to be a part of next week's show, you could also email us or go to the website and find us on social media and leave a question. But the easiest thing to do is call and leave a voicemail, because we can play your voicemail on air. So one more time, that number is 504-321-1501. Call us, leave us a voicemail, and we're going to do a voicemail wrap-up show next week.
Absolutely. And if you are enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed to the Around the Galaxy show, wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, this is only one of the shows on the SSW network.
In addition to this Around the Galaxy podcast, you can find us live almost every Thursday night on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com. At the SSW network, we do Star Wars News of the Week, celebrity and guest interviews, calls, live call-ins. We'll throw the link in the chat sometimes and get you involved with the show. It's a Star Wars show for the people and by the people.
And if you want to support what we do, the people need money. So head over to patreon.com/the SSW network. You'll get early access, exclusive content, and a chance to be a part of what we feel is the best Star Wars community out there.
And if you love what we do, please leave us a 5-star review. Share it with your friends. You've got an uncle, a grandfather, a coworker, somebody who likes Star Wars. Say, hey, check these guys out. And find us on social media at the SSW Network everywhere. And one more time, that voicemail line, 504-321-1501.
That's it for this week. Thanks again for hanging out with us, Stephen. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
And this is the Road to Rebellion.
Always. Wait, we got to give Steven the chance. Steven, may the force be with you.
Always.
Road to Rebellion is copyright 2025 Pete in the Seat Studios. For more information on this show and other shows in the SSW Network, please head over to the sswnetwork.com. Audio clips are copyright 2025 Lucasfilm.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.